Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Puri and I will be discussing cardiovascular physiology with you. We will understand the cardiovascular system from ground up. First, understanding the properties of flowing blood, then examining the nature of cardiac contraction and how it is regulated, to finally understanding the regulation of arterial pressure and tissue blood flow. For today's video, we will focus on the organization and function of the cardiovascular system. We will also look at the basic properties of flowing blood. Let's start with a brief overview of the heart itself. This cross-section shows you the cardiac chambers with valves separating them. This right here is the left atria separated from the left ventricle by the mitral valve. Right atria is separated from the right ventricle by the tricuspid valve. Cardiac valves are extremely important because they ensure unidirectional flow of blood. It is important to note that valve opening and chamber pressure differences cause cardiac blood flow. For example, during cardiac systole, pressure in the left ventricle is higher than pressure in the left atria. This forces the mitral valve to close. At the same time, this left ventricular pressure, which is higher than the pressure in the aorta, forces open the aortic valve, starting blood flow during cardiac systole. The reverse happens during cardiac diastole, when pressure in the left ventricle has dropped to near zero. Now, pressure in the aorta is higher than the pressure in the left ventricle. However, the aortic valve cannot be opened inside the ventricle, therefore, it's closed. This pressure in the left ventricle, which is now lower than the left atria, allows for the opening of mitral valve. Blood starts to flow from the left atria to the left ventricle. So you can see the ventricles eject volume during cardiac systole and accept volume during cardiac diastole. Now let's look at the functions of the cardiovascular system, which in turn are actually functions of flowing blood. Flowing blood transport nutrients like oxygen from lungs to the tissues and bring back waste like carbon dioxide from tissues to the lung. Blood flow is also integral to chemical signaling, where hormones which are synthesized in glands can be transported to distant organs which are their site of action. Flowing blood is also critical for defense mechanisms, since immune cells are made in the bone marrow or in the spleen, but they are transported to the site of injury by blood flow. And finally, thermoregulation is also centrally reliant on the flowing blood. Blood flow through the skin exchanges heat with the environment, helping us maintain our normal body temperature. Now let's take a closer look at the path of blood flow and notice some characteristics. Oxygenated blood is pumped from the left ventricle through the aortic valve into the systemic circulation. After perfusing these organs, only some of them are listed here. After perfusing these organs, blood then returns back to the right side of the heart through the venous system. You see that the blood coming back is deoxygenated, and that's why the arrows depicted are blue. The right side of the heart then pumps this blood through the pulmonary circulation, oxygenating it. And finally, this blood returns back to the left side of the heart, completing the cycle. And this cycle keeps on repeating itself over and over again. The point to notice here is that whatever comes out of the left heart goes back into the right, and whatever comes out of the right side of the heart goes back into the left. So you can say that the left-sided cardiac output, in other words, cardiac output of left ventricle is the same as cardiac output of the right ventricle, and this is a key point to remember moving forward. In a sense, heart is just an automaton which pumps what it gets. It collects venous return and pumps out cardiac output. It's a closed loop circuit where flow through all these segments must be equal. That means flow through the systemic circulation must be equal to flow in the pulmonary circulation. If you double the cardiac output, venous return also doubles. And the reverse is also true. Increasing venous return also increases cardiac output. Although the entire cardiovascular system is one system in series with two pumps in series, the left ventricle and the right ventricle, Within the systemic circulation, the organs have a parallel arrangement. You can see that heart muscles get about 3% of blood flow, whereas kidneys get about 22% of blood flow. This is due to the parallel arrangement of organs within the systemic circulation. Parallel arrangement has multiple benefits over a series arrangement. In a series arrangement, blood would flow from one organ to the next. If this was the case, then the proximal organ can withdraw all oxygen, leaving none for distal organs. So parallel arrangement ensures that every organ can control their individual blood flow, and all of these organs get the same quality of blood. If you add up these numbers, you get 100% of cardiac output. So notice, left-sided cardiac output is 100% and right-sided cardiac output is also 100%. They are one and the same. And this is because they are in series. However, the organs are in parallel. Let's now look at the vasculature and understand where does the blood flow. Arteries transport blood under pressure and are really just conduits between heart and arterioles. Arterioles arise from arteries and are conduits that are actively controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Arterioles are extensively innervated by the autonomic nervous system and can be modulated to either reduce or increase blood flow to the capillary bed downstream. So when you're thinking about arterioles, you can think about them as stop valves. If arterioles are open, then capillaries downstream will be perfused. If arterioles are closed, then capillary downstream will not be perfused. Capillaries are the site of exchange for gas, fluids, and electrolytes. Capillaries are where most of the action of the cardiovascular system is happening. More the number of capillaries in an organ, the better perfusion that organ gets. The number in these percentages shown are actually volumes and not flow. We will differentiate between volume and flow in a minute, but if you were to stop the cardiovascular system and cut open a human being, you will find that most of the volume of blood is residing in the systemic circulation, 84%. Only 9% of blood will be found in the pulmonary circulation, and remaining 7% will be found within the chambers of the heart itself. Of the 84% found in the systemic circulation, 2/3 is on the venous side. So the take-home point from this slide is that veins are actually reservoirs for blood. Thus, in essence, the cardiovascular system is a closed-loop circuit and can be considered analogous to this closed tank. Just like any closed-loop circuit, a couple of conclusions are obvious. First, flow across all segments must be equal. That is, whatever flows through the aorta must flow through the arterioles, capillaries, venous side, and return back to the heart. Second, flow in this closed loop is governed by volume. Higher volume will result in higher flow and vice versa.